Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. I hope everyone is doing well out there this morning, staying safe. We've had some pretty active weather over the last 24 hours with the tornadoes in northern Illinois. Just outside the Chicago area, we had reports of tornadoes. We had the wildfires in the panhandle of Texas. There was towns that had to be evacuated. So it's been pretty active. This system has pretty much been what we've pretty much been talking about. Very dynamic, very impactful, and it continues to bring a lot of impacts across areas of like Kentucky, even Ohio this morning, and all the weather will continue to shift to the east. And now the southern portion of this, like in the southeast, I think will weaken. The line of storms will lose what we call a lifting mechanism. So a lot of these storms, as far as where this line is right now, as it continues to progress to the east and southeast, will begin to weaken, but there still will be a line of storms associated with a pretty stout cold front. Meaning you're going to know when this cold front hits if it has not hit you yet in the eastern U.S. So we'll speak on that pretty heavily. The central U.S. is going to be much quieter today, but we'll talk about everybody, the entire lower 48s, and we'll break down today's forecast. Not going to get much into what's coming. We'll probably do a video tonight, or we'll touch base on it tomorrow. Folks, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so if you notice the volume's a little bit lower, I'm not talking as loud as I typically do. I just don't want to aggravate my throat. Woke up with a really sore throat. Probably have no business making this video, but these morning videos are such a routine for me. It's hard to break that chain that I got going on, so I'm not feeling that bad, honestly. It's just my throat's a little irritated. So we're going to work our way through this. If you hear me mess up some words or just kind of stop and clear my throat, just throat's irritated. So woke up with that. I could, when your throat starts to get sore, you can almost feel the signs of it the day before. Just little signs of it, and I could feel that yesterday, and sure enough, woke up in the middle of the night and it was just full fledged. So we're gonna work our way through this. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it, and so others can do so too. So let's get rocking and rolling. So as you can tell, all the weather is in the eastern U.S. If you look at these red outlined areas right in here, that is severe thunderstorm warnings. No tornado warnings as of right now, but I did notice about an hour and a half ago there was some tornado warnings associated with this line of storms. And it did look like what we call a CC drop, which basically means there was debris showing up on radar being lifted aloft in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So it did look like there was a tornado. I can't remember what state it was. It might have been Ohio. It might have been northern Kentucky. So please continue to be aware, weather aware if you're ahead of this line of storms right into here. I think this will lose some steam in the coming hours as it just kind of loses the prime ingredients for severe weather, but you do have a marginal risk up for a reason. These areas that saw severe weather yesterday in like northern Illinois, sure enough, it looks like you've had some snow that's kind of sweep through the area. Snow continues to fall in the northern lower Michigan area all the way up here into the central and eastern UP of Michigan. And then I think you'll get even more snow later today as cold air will shoot over the Great Lakes region, and some lake effect snow energy will get ongoing. Could have a hefty lake effect snow hit for like areas of like New York, like the Syracuse region. There's a couple isolated areas that could see over a foot of snow in New York State. We'll have a separate segment for that. Central U.S., pretty quiet. Western U.S., the only area that's active is the Pacific Northwest, where we continue just to get a rich feed of Pacific moisture into Washington State and Oregon. Storm Prediction Center for today, we could have some thunderstorms down here in southern New Mexico, Arizona, and even extreme western sections of Texas. We'll speak a little bit on that. But as far as severe weather today, the big storyline is this marginal risk. We'll see if we'll get an upgrade to a slight risk, but as of now, I honestly think the worst of the severe weather is ongoing right at this moment. But we do have a marginal risk, level 1 out of 5, stretching for just about Nashville, all the way up to, folks, all the way up to the Canadian line into the interior northeast area, all the way up to Burlington. So it's wild. What's going to happen today is like areas like Syracuse and the interior sections of the northeast will have a threat of severe weather a little bit later today, and then turn around and get about a foot of snow. So if we're using the term dynamic, it's very, very true with this system. It's a very dynamic system. We typically have stuff like this, like in late winter, early spring. We have, I read a comment in yesterday's video. It said something like, I believe it was in Illinois. I think 1979 they had that EF4, EF3 tornado that I think took a lot of people's lives. And then, the next day they had a few inches of snow. So that's typically how it is. And normally when you have severe weather one day in February, March, and even April, normally the next day, it's a pretty nice day, typically, because there's a cold front associated with all that severe weather right behind it. So as far as excessive rainfall outlook, just a marginal risk. So we will watch for a little bit of flooding. I think the state of Maine does have flood watches up. So please be aware of that. Just because there's not a very high end risk of flooding, that doesn't mean it can't happen, especially for our folks in the Pacific Northwest. I'm honestly very surprised there's no slight risk up, but watches, warnings, and advisories. You can see kind of the detachment from both systems, right? This is still from the ongoing system. All these wind advisories, severe thunderstorm watches are up, severe thunderstorm warnings, and we have high wind warnings up for New York State. We will talk about that. The winds will be howling in this area. We have winter weather advisories, and I do think we have winter storm warnings up for a couple counties in New York State. I think it's just being overlapped by these high wind warnings. But we have flood watches up for Vermont, New Hampshire, and a lot of counties in Maine. Winter weather advisories up for the western counties of lower Michigan and all the northern counties of the UP of Michigan, hugging up against Lake Superior. And then we look out here, there's a lot of alerts, warnings. There's blizzard warnings. See this red color? That's blizzard warnings up for the Sierra Nevada. It's crazy reading the discussion from the National Weather Service here locally here in California. They're saying that basically if you choose to travel up into the Sierra Nevada, you won't make it out. This is going to be the biggest winter storm most likely of the winter. It might be comparable to, what you saw last year, even though last year was just a parade of storms. But winter storm warnings up, even for Northern California, southwestern Oregon. I think the snow levels are going to drop with this. We'll kind of have a special segment on this maybe in tonight's video if I'm feeling a little bit better. But this is going to be a big storm for you folks here as far as snowfall in the higher elevations of the western U.S. High wind warnings already up in anticipation of this system. Flood watches are continuing up for the western sections of Washington state. High wind warnings, high wind watches up for areas of central and western Montana. We got winter storm watches already up in this teal color right in here for areas of the northern Rockies. So continuing to move forward here, we take a look at the southeast. We got this line of storms sweeping through right now. This will just continue to chug away to the southeast. As you can tell, it doesn't look quite as intense down here, but with daytime heating ahead of this line, you're still going to try to get some strengthening, and heating will definitely be there in the Carolinas and Georgia ahead of this cold front. Typically, not always, but a lot of times, your warmest day of a warm air mass with a cold front moving in is typically sometimes can just be the hours leading up to the cold front. And today will be pretty warm across the Carolinas, very breezy. But this is the cold front, basically right where this line of storms is. That is where the cold front is on your map. And I'll show you a better version of that when we look at the temperatures here in a second. But, we start to get into this afternoon. Georgia, just some showers, maybe a thunderstorm. Same thing with Alabama. But this definitely loosens up as it gets all the way down here. And it just basically gets this tilt. If you look very closely, what's wild is cold air moves in behind it so fast that it actually starts to snow in the Smokies as soon as the cold front kind of sweeps through. But this is a line of storms sweeping through Georgia and especially the Carolinas up into Virginia. And this could pack a punch up here in like central North Carolina, maybe all the way down to South Carolina. You see the bright yellows and reds and oranges right into here. It's a line of storms sweeping through. So, if you live in Raleigh, to the Hampton Roads area, all the way up to the Delmarva region, all of eastern North Carolina, maybe even the PD of South Carolina, sometime this afternoon, this evening, it's going to be a nice, warm, windy day, but all of a sudden you get a line of storms sweep through, and then the temperatures drop off dramatically, and then we get more stable air, and there's not a whole lot going on after that as we get into tomorrow morning. Folks, this is temperatures right now. Let's get you an update on this. Temperatures right at this moment. What's crazy is in northwest Arkansas is in the mid-20s. Southeast Arkansas is in the low 70s, folks. So that tells you how tight of a temperature gradient this cold front is associated with. So most of Tennessee still warm. Cold front's already moved through Memphis. It's cooling down very fast. But look how warm it is in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. A little bit of cloud cover, kind of keeping you guys a little bit more chillier. Sometimes you just have these pockets of a drier air, which allows for temperatures to drop a little bit more. That's why it looks almost colder. It is colder in like Florida than it is in Alabama. But temperatures will really surge ahead of this front. But these are temperatures right now. I mean, look at the cold air behind it. The good news is, if you're not a cold weather fan, which I'm not really at this point either, because at this point I'm kind of past winter, if I'm being completely honest. This cold air mass is very fleeting. I mean, you get one day of cold, one morning of cold, maybe two at most, and then it starts to warm right back up for everybody. So here's the progression of this cold front. I want to kind of show you this. Check this out. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to see where this cold front is, right? Watch this. Watch how the temperatures, come on, work with me. Watch how the temperatures surge in the Carolinas and Georgia ahead of this cold front. And then look, I mean, they get all the way up into like the 70s, low 80s. For example, this is 2 p.m. this afternoon. Huntsville, Alabama might be dropping into the low 40s, upper 30s. You head on down here to like Dothan or, even Montgomery, you're in the 70s to low 80s. And you're going to feel this cold front come through. Wherever your location is and the timing it comes, it's going to be difficult to tell everybody their timing just because there's many areas. But the Cumberland Plateau of Tennessee dropping into the 30s, folks. And it's going to be a nice warm day in Georgia and the Carolinas ahead of this front. Florida's going to get very warm, well into the 80s. But, this is going to hit my house, for example, around 5 to 6 p.m. And, look at this. The temperatures dramatically drop off. The winds shift. You're probably going to get a pretty strong gust of wind. Even if you don't get any rain, you're going to feel the front move through, and the temperatures drop off overnight. So, pretty wild stuff. Up here in the Northeast, a lot of scattered burst of moderate to heavy rain out there scattered about, just kind of rounds. And, we get into about midday. We got some heavier rain just continuing to move through West Virginia, Maryland, Virginia. We got on and off rain moving through eastern sections of PA, rain in southern New England. But then we're having a developing line of thunderstorms right into here. If you look really closely in western PA, this continues. And I'm telling you, there's cold air right behind this. Might have a sneeze coming. I think I beat it. We're good. So, a line of storms right here moving right through the Finger Lakes region, right through Syracuse, coming up on Binghamton. But if you notice, there's snow right behind it. That's the shot of cold air right behind this cold front. And this continues, and we'll take it all the way to about 5, 6 p.m. There's a line of storms moving through like central to eastern New York State, probably eastern PA. But then there's snow, lake effect snow, already firing up right behind it. Even a lake-to-lake connection from Lake Huron to Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. So a very dynamic system, guys, with some wacky weather in the Northeast today. Like I said, Syracuse right into here. Line of storm sweeps through this afternoon. And then it's snowing potentially 3 hours later. It's wild stuff, guys. And this line of storms will sweep all the way through the interior Northeast. Here it is. It might be broken up in nature here, but snow follows right behind it. Not that much snow, I don't think, in like the interior Northeast, but you could get a 1 to 2 hour period of snow even into like the Berkshires, Vermont, New Hampshire, and then maybe a few to several hour period of snow as rain dramatically switches to snow in Maine later on tonight. Even can have a switch to snow in like Boston around midnight tonight. But then check out the streamers behind this. Look at these lake effect snow streamers right here. You got one that's going to come off Lake Ontario. It's actually a lake-to-lake connection here. Pretty wild. And it's going to blast, I think, Syracuse and surrounding towns and communities. I really do. I think Syracuse will be the epicenter to a pretty epic lake effect snow event. It's pretty wild for late February. A lot of times the lakes are frozen, but it seems like lately that hasn't been the case. But we're going to get some snow squalls, kind of some lake effect snows kind of breaking containment off Lake Erie throughout Pennsylvania, probably after midnight tonight. And then we're still dealing with it tomorrow morning. And guys, we're probably going to get some snow showers all the way to New York City, Connecticut, Rhode Island tomorrow. Look at all these streamers kind of going all the way to the coastal regions, all the way to Long Island, guys. And this continues. We get all the way to tomorrow afternoon. It's still doing it. And then finally begins to taper off somewhat. Same thing with the temperatures in this region. Check it out. It's a very mild morning for Northeast standards up here for late February. But check this out. Look how temperatures warm, folks, into the 60s. And like up against Lake Ontario. the Finger Lakes region, the southern tier of New York, widespread 60s all across the mid-Atlantic interior and northeast. But check out the cold front right behind it. And then it just sweeps through and it gets cold fast. I mean, you're going to go from spring, right in the middle of spring type weather, right back to winter very quickly. And then you're waking up tomorrow morning with areas in the single digits. And then tomorrow's highs locked below freezing for a good section of the northeast. So precipitation between now and tomorrow afternoon, you know, down east areas of Maine is going to get a few inches of rain. Same thing with the southern sections of southern New England. 1 inch to 1.5 inches of rain's, you know, a pretty good bet across Pennsylvania. You know, a little bit lesser totals the further south you get, but it's going to definitely be kind of splotchy in nature. But as far as snow, guys, this is the wild part right here. You're going to get a few inches of snow off Lake Erie. You know, if you're south of Buffalo, kind of in these communities tucked in the far western sections of New York and northwestern sections of PA. But this is going to be kind of an isolated area of very, very heavy snow that's going to really pinpoint like the Syracuse region. But as you can tell, there's light snowfall accumulations across Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Anywhere from 1/2 inch to a couple inches of snow is possible in these areas. But of course, we will take a little bit of a closer look at some of these areas. Buffalo, you know, they're going for 1 inch or less, but you go down to Springfield, there, finally mixing up some words, guys. I've done pretty good 16 minutes into this video. 3 to 4 inches of snow. Jamestown, 2 to 3 inches. Rochester, a good 1 to 2. You get east of Rochester, that's when the snow can start to add up. You're going to have this thin corridor right here showing up on your screen. Tuck Hill Plateau, maybe 1 inch or so of snow. Weedsport, 4 to 6. Fulton, 3 to 4. But what's wild, it's when you get in this area right into here. Syracuse, 8. Let me make sure I got the right town. Yeah, Syracuse, 8 to 12 inches of snow, folks, in this little small corridor right into here. Hamilton, 6 to 8. Was that Cooperstown, 4 to 6. But you go down to Binghamton, inch or less. So pretty dramatic cutoff. This is going to be definitely a pretty stout. I mean, you've seen more snow in this area, obviously, but to consider that you're going to go from the 60s to 8 to 12 inches of snow, it's pretty dramatic, right? So definitely don't let this catch you off guard. Wind gusts between now and about 2 to 3 a.m. Tonight, tomorrow morning. Folks, some winds are going to be gusting. This is wind gusts, not sustained. But you can get 50 to 55 mile per hour wind gusts in Pennsylvania, New York State. Some areas will gust to over 60 to 65 miles per hour in these areas. And when this front comes through, you're going to know it because there will probably be an additional really intense gust of wind. But please be aware of these winds today. Tie stuff down before you leave to work and certainly be ready for this because the winds are going to be quite intense. And I don't want to leave my folks out here in Maine hanging, but the winds are going to be quite intense for the down east areas of Maine also. And I do apologize for my folks in Canada. I'm kind of leaving you hanging here, but you know, just go on and prepare if you're in like Nova Scotia, New Brunswick for a lot of strong winds coming up with this front that's going to sweep through your area too. So the south central U.S., a lot more quieter conditions. I said a prayer for you folks. I think the town was Canadian. I think that was how you pronounce it, Canadian, Texas. And it looked apocalyptic. I can't say the word. It looked like the end of the world. It did. Just some of the videos and pictures we saw of that town where it just looked like a big wall of smoke from these wildfires. So hopefully that can get extinguished and we can get that out. But it definitely looked like it hit some areas. I mean, there was some satellite images out of the panhandle of Texas yesterday, and it looked like the panhandle was on fire. I mean, large areas. So the south central today, the only area we're going to see precipitation is tucked way down here in southwest Texas. You're going to get a washout. Could get some flakes too in these higher elevations of western Texas right into here. Some wet snow is certainly possible. Some thunderstorms definitely possible in like southwest New Mexico and areas of Arizona also. But this will continue into the overnight hours, and then it'll mix with some cold air, and we'll get some snow that will begin to fall in these higher elevations of New Mexico. And then we could get some snow as we're waking up tomorrow morning. And maybe in some of these areas that are dealing with the wildfires. So I think you'll get some precipitation up in this area, so that's good. But how much? And it might fall in the form of rain, then a little bit of snow sometime tomorrow afternoon. In fact, the National Weather Service is calling for a little bit of snow in this area as far as accumulations. But as we're getting into tomorrow afternoon, rain starts to kind of overspread Oklahoma, North Texas, but not a lot. Snowfall between, sorry, this is rain. This is precipitation between now and tomorrow evening. Could get half inch to maybe as much as 3/4 of an inch down here in southwest Texas. And just a 1/4 inch to a little bit more here in southern sections of New Mexico. But, you look at the snow, guys, it's pretty wild. Calling for a little bit of snow in sections of the panhandle of Texas. A few tenths of an inch of snow. And then a couple inches of snow in the higher elevations of New Mexico. So, South Central U.S., really the only thing to speak on is we got this lingering snow that's going to pull out. But the snow ain't done after that. After we get into this afternoon, lake effect snow bands will get going, and will especially impact the eastern UP and then the western counties of lower Michigan for the lake effect snows off Lake Michigan. And these will continue. If you live in southern Ontario, you're going to get impacted by some lake effect snows throughout the afternoon, throughout the evening. These will last into the overnight hours. They will be quite intense. Also, you guys know the deal up here. And then you get into tomorrow morning, still a little bit of action. And I think by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, the lake effect snow is pretty much done. So pretty quick event, relatively speaking, but still, it's going to last a good 24 hours still. So some of this is for what's already fell, but a lot of this right in here, a lot of this will fall between now and the next 24 hours. Some areas will sneak in 8 to 12 inches of snow depending on your location in the eastern UP and Michigan, and several inches of snow is possible in the northwestern sections of lower Michigan. So be aware of that. A couple inches of snow is possible a little bit further south down the eastern shores of Lake Michigan. Conditions out west. We're going to get a lot of precipitation that surges into the Pacific Northwest. It will continue. It's already doing so. We're getting into this afternoon after lunchtime. This turns a little bit into a warmer system, but let's go on and just honestly, I don't want to leave my folks in Arizona hanging. There is going to be a spin down here in Arizona, sort of cut off energy. Some thunderstorms are possible if you live like in especially southeastern sections of Arizona. All right, I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. It was just hanging out. Thank y'all. Sorry about that. But some thunderstorms are possible down here in southeastern sections of Arizona and southwestern sections of New Mexico. But it's really this funnel of moisture right up into here. And let's see if we can get this going. Hey, where is it? There it is. Funnel of moisture will continue to surge into this area. We're getting into later this afternoon, this evening. But you notice, initially, it's too warm for any of this precipitation to be snow in the coastal ranges. But what I want you to watch here is watch how you start to see a little bit of blue start to get involved here as a cold front sweeps through, cools it down, lowers those snow levels, and by the time you're waking up tomorrow morning, the snow levels are much lower in these areas. So some of those higher elevations closer to the coast, the coastal range areas, will start to get some snow. So this is taking us all the way out to tomorrow morning, and then this cold front, you can see it. You can see the cold front right into here. Will continue to sweep in, and then after that, more of a convective in nature kind of feed of moisture, kind of what we saw at the earlier portion of this week. So definitely some active weather, guys. This is precipitation between now and the next just 24 hours. Some areas will get over 6 to 7 inches of precipitation. Now, some of this will be snow, which is wild to think about. And speaking of snow, check this out. Like how much snow between now and the next 48 hours, guys. Olympic Mountains feet of snow. Snow will start to add up later tonight in the coastal range here. The Olympic Mountains of both Oregon and Washington State, several inches to feet of snow. It just depends on your elevation, guys. You know that. And then you look over here in Idaho. You guys will get a little bit of snow too. Well, I say a little bit. It's a good bit. Several inches to over a feet of snow depending on where you are. This is between now and Friday morning. And then we head on down to California too, guys. This will start to add up for you guys. But the worst is still yet to come. We go on and extend this all the way out till Saturday morning. This is just the beginning of this system, guys. Several feet of snow in the Sierra Nevada on the way. Pretty wild stuff. So, temperatures in the eastern U.S., check out where the cold front is. This is the warmest time of the day. By far the warmest portion of this frame of the eastern central U.S. is the southeast. Some areas will get well into the 80s today in the southeast. But once that cold front moves through, that's it. Temperatures dramatically drop off all the way into the overnight hours. A lot of cold air up here in the Great Lakes region, well below freezing. But this is a very fleeting air mass, so you get locked in well below freezing. But this is already going to start to head out as we get into tomorrow And then temperatures in the western U.S. Enjoy your last warm day as another cold front is going to make its way. In fact, you can kind of see it already right into here as another front will move through with an associated trough, multiple pieces of energy. Nice day in the southwest, LA, San Diego, down here to Phoenix. Might get some storms around the Phoenix area. We'll see. But yeah, guys, that's all I got. Thank y'all for being patient with me with that video. I feel like it wasn't near as bad as I thought it could have been. But definitely asking for prayers. I just feel better. I really don't feel that bad. It's just my throat that's just kind of irritating me. So, but what's wild is my little girl, my oldest little girl. She was out of school for the same thing. So I think I just got what they got. So we've been pretty blessed. Nobody's really been sick lately in our family, so I can't really complain. It's been a lot less of a sick school year than it was last school year. So that's been good. So I can get through this. We'll be all right. If I feel better, we'll try to get you a video on what could happen out west coming in and kind of give you some updated information about that storm system that looked concerning at a point for the central U.S. We'll talk about what's changed in the next video. God bless all y'all. Have a great Wednesday. Have a great Wednesday. There you go.